All right, so let's move on to sort of the more complex topics. It's sort of the stuff which I'm pretty excited about. So let's say we've got a company. They're getting some decent sales every month, and they've been reading a lot about A/B testing and things like this. Um, like I personally find that this idea of A/B testing has been abused so much that everybody thinks that it's like this golden panacea. Like for instance, one of the biggest problems I see is this problem of statistical significance. Like I think people don't fully can you just walk us through how you explain A/B testing to your clients so that
Yeah,
like what's your sort of quick 101 on it?
yeah. So yeah, I find most companies understand what A/B testing will be. They'll have two variations of a page or a part of a page. So we don't spend too much time there. What I really want them to do, and not all of them do it perfectly, is to just have a consistent process. So I tell them, hey, you can have tons of ideas. There's going to be no lack of ideas from yourself, from your CEO, from your team. Don't worry, you'll have lots of ideas. Find a way to prioritize them, and give them different options. Here is a model where you have like multiple columns, maybe based on effort or impact, or maybe just a very simple one like we spoke before, like let's just rank each idea on a scale of 1 to 10 and get 4 or 5 people to do it. But just have a way to prioritize them
Right.
based on the team effort. And then when you take, let's say the next idea,
Mhm.
runs run through some basic statistical significance. Maybe we don't call it that, but just say let's run through what what we want people, or how many people we want us to see this.
Explain statistical significance.
Statistical significance really just means that a change that was seen, let's say a landing page that performed better, uh, the improvement, let's say landing page A, the original, the control as it gets called, converts at 10%, and then landing page B converts at 15%. That difference, between 10 and 5, is where the significance comes from. So in simple terms, the larger the change, so if landing page B converted at 45%, it's a big change. You would need less people to be able to be significant. But the smaller the change, the more people you need. So then there's calculators online, and A/B testing tools will do this for you. It just gives you a number, up to 100%. And in the industry, anything about 95 tends to be good. So if if Optimizely or WVL tells you that your landing page B converted at a 95% significance, it's roughly telling you that the change that they saw and the number of people that saw it is significant, and it's not just random. Because and a lot of times you can just run something and be random because of random cases, the time of day, the day of the week, and so on. But it's not random. That's what statistical significance is trying to help you understand, that this was deliberate, and it's something that would hold in theory. That's at least what the math is trying to tell us.
Yeah, and I think this is sort of this topic which coming back to the very first thing we talked about in terms of data literacy. That's so important, right? Like a very practical example I had was we were running tests, and the thing is that in e-commerce, people don't like. There's an average order value, but you have some people who buy a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So if I had an experiment where like I think in this particular example, there was a guy from a hotel who made this monstrous order, right? So you're running an A/B test, and on B, this person from the hotel comes in and buys stuff which is like at least 50x the average amount. So now suddenly, no matter what A does, B is just always amazing. But if so then I got into this topic where I was like, no, but it doesn't mean B is that great because we don't have enough people going through. So I like how you put that. So when we're coming down to this, how like what's the metric that you usually talk to customers about to say that okay, like you are ready to do A/B tests? Like, are you looking at like page views per month, or do you say, you know what, it's fine at any stage, but it just takes more time? How do you have that conversation with clients, the smaller ones especially?
Yeah. Of course, you could run a test, and if you have all the time in the world, you could run it for 6 months and get there eventually. Get to that significance. But most companies will not. I think most companies will not run anything longer than 1 month at most. I think it's just almost like a mental struggle for them to think beyond that. So we're talking about a month timeline. So really, what I tell them is, hey, you'll be ready when let's say you have two things you want to test. The control versus like variation A or whatever.
Yeah.
The moment you're able to get a few hundred conversions on each one within that month is when you're ready. And then they'll say, okay, well, we're trying to test for sales. So that means that, each of those things we want to test, it needs to get a few hundred conversions. And then they can look at their sales numbers and then make some, rough math to see if they're ready or not. That's the guidance. Of course, like I'm sure you have, I've seen companies run A/B tests and get 20 sales on each of their variations. And then they'd be like, it looks like variation B is much better because there were 22 sales versus 20 sales. I'm like, this is
No,
it doesn't make sense. Yeah. So yeah, those are the rough guidance. A few hundred conversions on each variation. Be able to run it for at least a couple of weeks to try to get some of the seasonality out of it. Of course,
Right.
There's maybe larger seasonality in the year, but let's not get into that. And then be able to prioritize it.
So, I mean, I know, for instance, Google Optimize is a pretty friendly. I mean, there's obviously much more expensive tools like Optimizely, but I think Google Optimize is free,
Yes.
and it's
Yep.
pretty easy to set up. Are there any other tools that you've seen, or maybe it's just Google Optimize, that you could recommend to a small business e-commerce owner who's thinking, "Hey, I've heard about this A/B testing stuff. How do I get started?"
Yeah. No, I think Google Optimize is fantastic. It is free. I think you're limited to 3 active tests or 5 active tests at any given time, or like active slots. So it's fantastic. It easily integrates with Google Analytics, which then could probably easily integrate with Shopify. So you're able to get your your e-commerce data into Google Analytics and then into Google Optimize. So that's a really popular stack, I think, for any business that's testing on web.
And what have you seen like impactful A/B tests, right? Because I think conceptually, like you said, it's pretty intuitive. I have version A, version B. I just want to see which one's better, and then if B is better, I'm going to stick with B, and now test it against the new one. But I guess there's a million areas that you can apply it to, right? So in like with the clients you work with, what are the areas that you found are typically like good places to start with? Like what have they done which has been useful?
Yeah. I find it helpful to start in the areas where we're asking for the most commitment.
Okay.
So let's say the credit card area tends to be a high commitment area. It's at that point where you're really, someone can go through, add products and be like, that looks amazing. I want that. I want this. Yes, I'll do this. Add to cart. But when the credit card comes out, I think is when it really starts to become real. So the credit card portion, making sure that part is correct. It's interesting, because credit cards are very common, at least in US and Canada. But I still see e-commerce stores that they sort of miss all the basic cues. So you look at Amazon and you have all the social proof, the security, all the logos and so on, the way the credit cards get validated, all that kind of stuff. But I find a lot of, especially new e-commerce businesses, seem to miss that a little bit. Using Shopify can really help you because they'll give you some of those fundamentals. But if you're not with a Shopify, maybe you build your own platform, you want to make sure that you have your basics there. So commitment will be one. The second one is consistency. Same thing. I've seen some e-commerce flows that, for example, they don't show all the pricing upfront. So they might not show the shipping or the taxes or some random duty fees. So everything's fine. The user's like, oh yeah, I want this. It's going to cost this much. I get that. And then boom, they're hit with, 20-30% of fees in the checkout portion. So being able to be consistent.
But how would you A/B test that? Are you saying you A/B test consistency versus inconsistency, or like how does that relate to A/B testing?
You A/B test it by showing some of the messaging upfront.
Okay.
So showing somebody expectation on what the shipment might be, maybe a shipment estimate, or maybe a message that would show that.
Right. Got it.
And I'm not sure how much you've seen this, but I've seen also e-commerce companies that completely hide the price. So they actually build more of a like a funnel, but the price is actually hidden all the way at the end. So you go through, you select your product, you customize it, and you don't actually get the price at the very end. That's, I think, also an element of consistency where you're not really sure what's going to happen until you really get to the end. So they see huge drop-offs at the very end, which is maybe a little bit more rare. Yeah.